All right, we are going to do a bonus sort of mini episode because I posted the other one with the wrong painting. So this time we'll do it right. Anyway, hey Bonnie.
Well, hello, Lance. Welcome to Nothing But Worry.
Nothing But Worry special edition. This is sort of an EP edition.
Ah, okay. Speaking of EPs and extra music, you sent me some great music tonight.
Yes, this song.
Clutch?
Well, first of all, the Tesla has a new EP out, and I can't remember the goddamn name of the song, but the video is Frank Hannon and the new guitar player playing acoustic guitars out in the middle of the woods. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I also sent Bonnie new Clutch song called Slaughter Beach. Both of them are really good songs. There's so much good music out, right?
And I find it amusing every time I see Clutch. I remember what the lead singer looked like when he first got started. No beard. He was a baby face. Completely changed the way he looks.
Yeah. So what I was saying, Bonnie was like, well, if you're just making their video just to post the damn painting, then what are we going to talk about? There's lots to talk about. Here, for instance, here's what we're going to talk about first. We can hear my computer from where we're sitting. That's down in my studio. I'm playing an 8-hour noise video, just background noise blockout. And Bonnie said, I can hear it. I said, yeah, this particular one is brown noise or something. And
they don't have commercials on these things?
No.
You're fortunate.
Well, I really like this one because it sounds like when I would ride home on the school bus and there was nobody else on the bus but me and the windows were down. And it was like a warm day, windows are down and nobody's making any noise. And it's just the rumble of the road, the noise of the bus, the wind coming through the windows. Yes. Peaceful, quiet, beautiful.
The kind of thing that puts babies to sleep.
Really? And I remember being like 16 and getting my driver's license and getting ready to start driving to school. And I remember being on the school bus like the last time and thinking, my God, this is the last time I'm ever going to ride the school bus. And it was a day like this where I could hear,
the road noise.
Yeah, the quiet.
Yeah. That reminds me. Sometimes we'll be downtown during school dismissal time, and kids will be on the buses. They'll be hanging out the window shooting birds at the cars and yelling insults and stuff. And that's nothing like what you experienced when you were young living out in the countryside.
I'll tell you a story you've never heard. Sometime around I quit public school in 3rd grade and moved to private school in 4th. I guess this would have been around 3rd grade. My mother's parents used to live in Monroe and had a big backyard, a big piece of property they used for a garden in the big backyard. And I was playing around back there and I found one of I don't know what they're called, but they're one of those little keychain picture in a square things. You hold it up to the light, you can see a nudie picture in there.
Oh my God!
I found one in the backyard, and it was, as I recall, 2 women laying naked on a bed.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Anyway, I remember taking it into my mother and showing her, and she's like, "Oh, somebody left that back there." Anyway, so she set it on furniture to the side, like, "You're a good boy for turning this in," Well, as it's getting time to go, I'm like, you know what? I really shouldn't have shown that to her. I should have kept it for myself. So when we were about to get in the car, I said, oh, I got to run to the bathroom. I ran back in and I got it. Okay, now, like the next day or something, we were on the school bus, and I was passing it around to the kids on the bus. And
Is this the private school kid?
No, this is public school.
Oh, okay.
And one of the older girls grabbed it, and she looked through it and was like, just aghast with disgust and fear and hatred, and she flung it out the window, and I just...
Bitch.
Yeah.
Some people just ruin all the fun.
Yeah.
Take the joy out of life.
So tonight earlier,
You read me poetry.
I read some prose poems by Nanosfella Oratus, and I showed Bonnie some stuff in Viz magazine and in Hate comic book, and so anyway, we started talking about poetry a good bit.
Yeah, I think it. For me, I don't know what it was, at what point I was supposed to have been introduced to understanding poetry, as far as rhyme, meter, scan, etc. But you and I grew up during the 70s, and there was a lot of poetry in a lot of books. You'd find in your social studies,
Right.
history, math, and it was as if there was this very liberal arts education
I was
focus
about
on
to-
things, where you wanted to incorporate all the different studies together.
Well, this is something that I was going to bring up earlier when we had this conversation. I didn't get around to doing it. But growing up in the 70s, going to public school, you had more opportunities to do creative writing and to learn how to write poetry on your own. You know what you chose, and to do arts and stuff, because there was ample fund, even out in backwoods Oglethorpe County. There was ample funding for stuff like that. And speaking of what you're talking about, the poetry things, I have in my room a couple of 70s like poetry anthologies that are like mixture of poetry and photography. And it just looking at them, it's that whole 70s milieu, you know.
Yeah, and the photographs are of different things. It's photographs of paintings, photographs of sculptures, photographs of craft, handmade art, but it's also photographs of things in society. If it's a kid walking a dog, a mother and child, or just a building landscape sort of thing.
It'll be like abstract photography, like shadow of a bird on a sidewalk.
Yeah,
And it'll be
yeah.
accompanying some poem that's about the birds or maybe city life or something, you know.
Yeah. If you go back and watch PBS Sesame Street shorts from that time, you get a good feel for those sort of things. Where they would have the letters in the urban setting, and they would show you L over and over and over in different settings on the building.
That's right. There's one famous one. You can see it on YouTube. It's called Sesame Street Jazz Alphabet. And it's the letters of the alphabet found on, I guess, New York City street
Yeah.
areas just randomly. And there's this jazzy music playing. And as each letter pops up, a bunch of kids go, A, B.
C. Yeah, I know. It's so cute.
Yeah. We had that back when we had VCR, you and I, we had that Sesame Street compilation, like a 30-minute thing on a cassette, and we used to play it for the kids.
When our kids were coming up, they came up under George W. Bush. And he had this education focus where everything was focused on the absolute fundamentals. And that meant that when you were a young person and you were in elementary school before things got broken down into their component classes, science, math, etc., in elementary school, you just learned in a block, your morning block and your afternoon block. And it was based around when you went to lunch. And the emphasis was such that they wanted testing in these key areas. So you had social studies and history and science got set aside for what they thought were the basics of reading and math, I think, were what their core was. And I remember talking to one of the educators there saying back in the 70s, they would have these classroom worksheets, and let's say it was about one of the holidays coming up. And so they would include on the worksheet all the different things. They would include the history of the 4th of July. They would include a little bit of art about, this is a picture of, the first flag, this other flag color, this. And then they would also have a little bit. Did you know that in 1776 the following inventions were made? So you have a touch of science. And I said, why can't you guys do that? If you're being limited to teaching these key things, then teach the kids to read about science. But no, they had some kind of rigid curriculum that very narrowly defined what they would be teaching. And so the kids did not get exposed to proper science until they were in middle school and had separate science classes.
Well, I remember, I think this was third grade, public school. I got sent to one of the gifted classes, advanced classes, or whatever, and there was a geometry teaching tool called a Mira, M-I-R-A, and it was just so fun. It's a sort of H-shaped, transparent piece of red plastic, and there's a workbook, and it reflects images from the workbook. You put it on top of the workbook, and it reflects the images in a certain area of the device, and it will tell you, now tilt the Mira until the reflection meets the dot over here, and then draw a line from it or something. And it's to teach you basic geometry principles. And it was so cool and so fun. I've never seen anything like it since then. It's like 78. Well, this is how ignorant I was going home and told my mother, oh, this thing is and this is what she says. She goes, now, Lance, are you trying to say mirror?
Oh, God.
But anyway, that was the kind of thing that they had at public school back then. When we went to private school, this private Christian school, they had nothing.
They were one of those like George W. Bush. Let's get down to the basics. You only need reading, writing, arithmetic,
And
the Bible.
And all the materials, the curriculum, they wanted it to be from Christian publishing houses. And I remember we had a literature textbook, and it's like going through the greats of 20th century American literature. And all of them, well, begrudgingly, we have to include Hemingway and Faulkner, and oh, God. But so they would have a little biographical sketch at the beginning before you got into reading.
He was a drunk.
Yeah. He was a great writer, and he had this and that, but he was also a serial adulterer who was married 4 times and blew his head off in a drunken fury.
This was due to his alcoholism. They'd always find some way to guilt and sin and
died without any public testimonial to his relationship with Jesus.
It was sickening. Today, earlier, you were helping me out in the kitchen putting up things. And I joke that you don't know where things go. And a lot of times I do find things in the wrong spot. And anybody who knows me that knows that everything has its exact same correct spot. So if it's 6 inches to the right or left, I can't find it. So we're in the kitchen, we're putting up stuff, and you joke about obedience, and we both broke into the obedience song. We had been grilled on this as kids in Christian churches. Southern Baptist sent down this manual of things you're going to learn, and one summer it was the obedience song. And you
spell out the word obedience, and then it goes.
Is the very best way.
Obedience is the very best way to show that you believe. Now, of course, what does that mean? Obey whom? Well, the tenets of the Bible, but that's a little sketchy because they contradict. How do you best obey? Well, it's by doing what your local interpreter of the scriptures says. That is your preacher,
Despite how it contradicts common sense.
Well,
how it contradicts.
Well, if you're a real Christian, Lance, you'll vote for the Republican candidate. But Trump is an evil person. Well, the Republicans are the official spokesman of God on this planet, and if they choose Trump, then that's what God has chosen.
And not that Pope, that liberal Pope.
Unbelievable. So anyway, we have a really good weekend so far. I got a lot done last night, and I just felt relaxed. And I'll tell you something else. I knew that I was going to not want to work out if I waited to my regular time. So when I got up today, I did my calisthenics early, and I think that's part of the reason I feel so good now.
I feel good because I made good food today.
Yeah, I haven't had any yet. There's not much left.
Yeah, well, Peter really dug into it, and I've had now 3 bowls of it. Okay.
Is there any bread left?
Yeah, there's 4 rolls.
That's probably what I'll focus on.
So Peter and I each had 2 of those. I'm trying to remember if I've eaten today. I think I did have something to eat earlier. I just can't remember what it was.
I
Had
had
tea.
I had a spinach and Swiss cheese roll
Wrap?
or tortilla wrap with Ming's Szechuan chutney in it. That stuff is so volcanic. And I had some peanut butter pretzels and some dried figs, and
Stuff you do my figs.
I think that's it. Oh, I thought they were our figs.
They are, but focus on the fresh fruit we've got right now.
I don't feel like eating an apple right at the moment. I have to be really, really in a healthy mood for that.
Feel like a horse. Oh, Lord.
Oh, dear.
So, I really enjoyed the poems that you were reading today.
Oh, good.
And as I was listening, I one of the questions I had was, were these in Greek originally and then translated? Because the way that they flowed, it just sounded, it sounded beautiful. It was a certain conversational style, observational, some humor. It was really nice. I like that. And you said it was what, free verse?
No, they're prose poems.
Prose,
So
right.
they're not arranged on the paper like a poem would be. They're just sort of very short, surrealist pieces. They could be classified as prose poems or something else, but and I like that kind of writing. That's a lot. I like to write stuff like that too. The more you can free yourself from being strictly stuck in the real world, the better off you are, I think.
Yeah. Well, you started talking about the poetry and what we appreciate. Well, we appreciate that style. You can go back and read standard poetry, and there is some beauty in it. And there are things that you may appreciate about it. But we prefer this more of the prose, the free form. And I realized that it's kind of like with art. Different types of art, you can appreciate the technically proficient, the well-trained artist who is able to put something Chuck Close perfection, or a John Singer Sargent who's just fabulous. But then you go and you look at something like a Pollock or a Kandinsky, and it just brings joy to you in a different sort of way, because it isn't that perfection. It seems more natural. It breaks the rules.
Well, that was something else I was going to mention when we were talking about painting earlier. We were talking about Marc Chagall, the Birthday, which is a great painting. I meant to bring up one of the things about my painting is I'm trying to combine gestural abstraction with cartoon-based figuration, or not so much cartoon-based, but the way that I draw figures, have that as fleshed out as I can. But I like to throw in the background some like gestural abstraction, like the one I'm doing right now. It's a painter standing in front of a canvas he did, and it's got this abstract thing on it.
Well, oftentimes the abstract things are confined to a canvas or a sculpture or a device on the painting. I'm
Right.
wondering if, like in The Birthday by Chagall, you've got the man floating above the girl to come in and swoop in over her and hand her a present.
Yeah, he's giving her a
And I'm
kiss.
wondering if maybe your character should begin to move outside the constraints of normal three-dimensional
Well,
movement.
they do sometimes. You know, I talk about that painting. When I was a kid, we didn't have exposure to art very much, But my mother bought a 1977 edition of World Book Encyclopedias when I was a kid, and the painting article in that encyclopedia was a big influence on me because a lot of my favorite paintings are still in that. The Marc Chagall's birthday is one of them. Was in that article, and
But it's more than just that. That was the early influence. Who were the big influences for you as painters?
well, my decision to become a painter was mainly influenced by Francis Bacon, Jörg Immendorf, and Anthony Green. When I first started painting, I was trying to ape Immendorf a good bit, but
Yeah,
over
you
these,
had a certain aspect of outlining things in a color, like yellow or something.
right?
Like
Yeah,
he did it in one
yeah, that
phase.
really impressed me. That when he did that, I'd love to see those in person because some of them are like 30 feet wide.
Yeah. The Francis Bacon it still does not sit well with me. I can appreciate it, but it's at least with the Picassos when he puts everything off kilter and off center, out of place. There's almost a cartoonish quality. The Francis Bacon's is so realistic in the way he expresses himself. I find it disturbing. It's like watching the Nazis melt in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay,
Well,
frame by frame.
Francis Bacon is one of those artists that I don't particularly. I prefer his later stuff to the stuff that he's most celebrated for. The Van Gogh series, the Studies for the Base of Crucifixion, and the Screaming Popes. That era is not my favorite. My favorite is the later stuff, like the triptychs with, like say, somebody sitting on a toilet, and it's very abstracted and blurry. Those things I prefer those.
The Anthony Green, though, was always my favorite. It's a guy who is married. He and his wife have a house together, and it's filled with things, and the gardens surround the house, and it creates this little world that is confined by the fence and the outline, the plot of where they live. And when he does his paintings, he'll use his wife and the house and the garden as the focus of the painting. And they're all slightly stilted
Well,
so that the three dimensionality is twisted and warped off center a bit.
yeah, he's known for two things mainly. First, his abiding theme is his family and his extended family, and so he'll paint the people he knows, his family members, and their houses and his own house over and over and over.
Yeah.
And the second thing is he didn't want to be bound by traditional shapes of canvas, so he would have oddly shaped canvases. Now, after the way I got introduced to him was a book that he did called A Green Part of the World, but after that book came out, he went even further to where he has these freestanding sculptures things, and the painting is on them; it goes around them, and I
Yeah.
don't like those at all.
I can see why you might have a problem with that.
Like he has like a wooden, very.
I've seen it.
It's just not. But the other stuff.
But his early stuff is something that you definitely appreciate.
Oh yeah,
The
I
focus.
really really like the way he painted.
There's a certain vividness to his color palette.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost Fauvist, which I love the Fauvism. But his content is what won me over also.
We paint every single thing that's in like the living room or something, and it's just amazing.
You remember the Bruegel pictures?
Mm-hmm.
Younger, older Bruegels. They would go into a town or
Oh,
to
yeah.
a scene, and they would paint every little aspect. The children playing hoops, the
Yeah.
man pulling the fish out, the man selling the fish,
Yeah.
the reapers, the people taking a nap on the side, having lunches, as they're, working in the fields and out on the ice skating. All those little things, the wedding,
It
the
is.
celebrants there,
Yeah.
all the different traditions. And it's that same sort of thing that Green captures. All these different parts of his home, and you can relate to those things. You've got a chair also and a TV. Oh, he's got the same books. He has the same appreciation for sculpture or lamps or just the oddities, hanging something in the window to reflect the light.
Yeah. That book was a big deal for me. I haven't looked at it in years.
Where did you get that? Remainder?
At that Remainder bookstore, used to be over there next to the movie theater in Beechwood.
Wow. That was such a good source. You know what we haven't
Tons of stuff there.
read or found lately? Somewhere in this house is one of our favorite books from a date night many years ago.
What?
Portly Penguin. Do you remember that?
That
The
book.
one who did the Maisie books for children.
Yeah,
did
the
Portly Penguin.
Cousins, Lucy Cousins.
Ah,
But that book is probably packed up with the kids' toys and junk next door in one of those buckets.
oh, I hope not.
Well, where else would it be?
Oh, Peter's got a closet in there full of.
It could be in
children's
that.
books. It could be in
Yeah,
that.
the closet in Reed's old room is just full of shit, and you can't get to anything.
It's
I
very
nearly
disappointing.
killed myself pulling my children's books out of there.
Jesus. I mean, it doesn't make sense that it has devolved into this because I took his closet in his room and took the sides and put shelves every 1.5 feet or so to accommodate boxes for his.
Did you
store.
see what he's doing in the floor in there?
No.
He's got Legos, thousands of them laid out all over the place in there.
He has had Lego sets since he could read, basically.
Yeah.
And he just puts the most intricate things together. Yeah, he has boards that the set's attached to,
Yeah.
and he bought some of those boards so he could stabilize some of the displays. That kid's got to get his own house,
He does, doesn't he?
just so he'll have room for this stuff. Otherwise, we're going to be having to pay for an addition.
Maybe they can. Maybe he and his girlfriend could renovate the barn and make that livable.
Ew. Stay out of my barn. Yeah, we got to put some stuff in that barn, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Well, this is meant to be a brief episode and not an extended one. Let's see how long we've been talking.
Too long.
28 minutes. I think that's
Too long
plenty.
as
Yeah.
usual.
Yeah, we got other shit to do. All right, we're going to call it quits. Bye.
All right, dear. Good night.
Bye. Good night.